Recently, the news has been so overwhelming. First, Putin comes to meet Trump, then a Ukrainian refugee is tragically killed on a train in North Carolina, Russia attacks Poland, and this week Charlie Kirk was killed. One shocking headline follows another, and sometimes you just want to turn off your phone, hide under a blanket, and escape from it all. But like many of you, I can't, so that's why today I want to talk about the case of Iryna Zarutska. Not just because it's painful, but because it hurts to see how this Ukrainian family strategy is being used by the MAGA movement to push their political narratives in the US. And for me, as Ukrainian refugee living in the US, this reaction feels extremely hypocritical. Iryna left us so young. She was only 23. She studied art and restoration in Kiev, but when Russia invaded in 2022, she fled to the US, and here she worked in a pizzeria, took care of pets for friends, and dreamed of becoming a vet assistant. A young woman with so many plans, whose life was tragically cut short on August 22. Most of you have already seen this disturbing footage. In this video, I will show some clips to give context, but I would include the most graphic moments out of respect for her family, who asked people not to spread them. They said, "We don't want her to be remembered for that horrible video. She was a kind and bright soul, and we want her life, not her death, to be her legacy." The attacker, Carlos Brown, had a long record of arrests and charges, including armed robbery and repeated misuse of 911. He had also been diagnosed with schizophrenia. His mother later said that her son shouldn't have been released after his January arrest. She explained that his behavior was becoming aggressive and that he needed treatment, but her attempts to get him help were rejected. She had taken him to a shelter and tried to connect him with mental health services, but was turned away because, according to officials, he didn't meet the criteria for forced hospitalization. Brown believed the government had implanted some kind of material or chip in his body that controlled his thoughts and actions. And his mother said that he'd been speaking this way since leaving prison and that he frequently experienced paranoia and delusions. Just days after his arrest, in a recorded call on August 28, Brown told his sister that this material had made him attack Iryna.
The material, put it like this, the material used my body to stab the lady.
And so she just got stabbed.
Yeah. You know that's not me. I'm talking about just for no reason. But since they did that, now they gotta investigate the material my body is exposed to. Since they want to do all that, now they gotta investigate.
It's funny because she's from the Ukraine. She's from Russia, and they got a war. They had a war going on against the United States. So I'm just trying to understand, out of all people, why her?
It ain't. I don't have nothing. They just lashed out on her. That's what happened.
And there is no logic in his words. This is a textbook example of delusional thinking common in psychosis and schizophrenia. Since 2007, Brown had cycled through the system with repeated arrests. Some charges led to convictions, like armed robbery, while others were dismissed. After serving a prison sentence for armed robbery, he was released on parole. And in January 2025, he was arrested again for abusing 911, making multiple calls from a hospital, and claiming material in his body was controlling him. And Magistrate Judge Teresa Stokes presided over that case and, following state law, released him. And I know people are blaming this judge and saying that she's responsible for Iryna's death, but let's look closer at why in that moment she particularly couldn't hold him. The last arrest was for misusing 911. Legally, it's a misdemeanor, not a violent felony. Under North Carolina law, a magistrate must set release condition unless there are clear evidence of danger or flight risk. Despite his odd behavior and past record, there was no new violent charge, so the judge had little legal basis to keep him in jail. In other words, Judge Strokes followed the law and likely didn't have grounds to detain him per trial for a false 911 case. And her decision became this last straw that people point to, but it was part of much larger chain of system failures. And let's look at that change and how in theory this tragedy might have been prevented. Police arrested him 14 times, but many cases were minor, and he were quickly released. Probation didn't monitor his treatment after prison, even as his mother reported worsening symptoms. Mental health services refused hospitalization because he didn't meet narrow criteria. In January 2025, Judge Stokes released him in the 911 case with no legal basis to hold him, and the psychiatric evaluation was never completed. This isn't about the fault of one judge handling minor case. It's a systematic chain of failures that sadly aligns into a tragic outcome. In high-profile case like this, we naturally search for someone to blame, sometimes even the bystanders. And I cried the first time I saw the video. It looked like she was completely alone in her final moment. Then I saw comments saying that no one helped her because the people around were black. And that was racism against the young woman. My feed filled with posts about reverse racism. But I had to stop and separate three very important things, like human reaction in a moment of terror, media narratives, and reality. Because be honest, would you instantly rush in? Because people react differently under extreme stress. Some run, some freeze, some can't handle the sight of blood. Most of us don't actually know how to stop bleeding. And even if you do in theory, it's different in practice. The first reaction is often freeze and panic. In the video, passengers first didn't even grasp what happened, and then they weren't shocked. But later, a man does approach. In footage from another angle, you can see him, and then he take off his shirt and try to stop the bleeding, and then others step in, including a man sitting behind the attacker. But those clips didn't go viral. Social media spread it only the initial shock, creating the impression that no one did anything. And honestly, it feels so intentional, sharing only the part that stokes anger. Yes, help didn't come immediately, but it did come after the attacker moved away. And the racial explanations are internet speculation. In shock, people of all backgrounds react similarly. And this isn't the first case in the US. In 2018, there was the reverse scenario. A white man with mental illness killed a black girl, Nia Wilson, on a train platform in California. In both cases, the perpetrators has diagnosis and long records. In both, the system failed. These tragedies didn't happen because someone was black or white. They happened because the system can't handle severe mental illnesses. Iryna and Nia were victims of systematic failure and lack of real protection. And using their deaths to inflame racial hatred, it just disrespects both of them. And you know what else disrespects Iryna's memory? Political exploitation of her tragedy.
A beautiful young girl that never had problems in life, with a magnificent future in this country.
Never had problems in life? With a magnificent future in this country? What? As a Ukrainian refugee, I have to ask, what future did he mean? His policies and rhetoric target the every programs that allowed us to come here and escape war. Today, everything is being done to push us out and set us back to where the war continues. And let me explain how Ukrainians even ended up in the US. After the full-scale invasion in 2022, the US created a program called Uniting for Ukraine, U4U. It allowed Ukrainians to legally enter the US if they had an American sponsor, and it gave them the right to work. Later, another option appeared, the temporary protected status (TPS), but TPS only applied if you arrived before August 16, 2023. And then in January 2025, Department of Homeland Security froze all new U4U filings. And just 2 months later, in March, reports said that Trump was considering canceling protections for roughly 240,000 Ukrainians, which could mean forced removals. Officially, the program wasn't abolished, but in reality, new cases weren't being approved, and old ones were stuck pending. USCIS kept the filing fees, but people received no answers. Meanwhile, work permits expired, and without them, Ukrainians can't legally work, and employers are required to let them go, even if their cases are still processing. Driving license expired too, so families were left in cruel limbo with no work, no driving, and no stability. So some families couldn't take the uncertainty and returned to Ukraine straight back into a war zone. Others left for Europe, starting over from zero again, and many feel pushed out, not openly deported, but squeezed out by endless bureaucracy. And sometimes that's even harsher because people are forced to choose stay in America without rights or return to a place where people are dying every day. That's why when Trump uses Iryna's death to attack Democrats while ignoring his own role in destroying Ukrainian protection, that's hypocrisy. It's not compassion, and he's exploiting the death of a Ukrainian young woman as a tool for partisan fights. And if Trump decided to politicize this tragedy, let's follow his logic all the way. He called Carlos a killer, unstable, and said that he deserves the death penalty. But why is Trump so eager to spotlight the Carlos punishment while at the same time ignoring a far worse killer? The one killing thousands, people in their homes at night, children in broad daylight on playgrounds, the one destroying cities and villages, leaving people homeless and forcing them to flee, the one holding an entire country in fear. Without him, Iryna would never have become a refugee. She wouldn't have come to the US, wouldn't have been on the train that night, and she would be alive today. Trump knows him well and says he has great relationships with him. He invited him to dinner, rolled out the red carpet, applauded, and shook his hand. And we all know the name of this killer. Today we are speaking about a terrible tragedy and a life that cannot be brought back. Let's remember her parents who now live with an unbearable loss. They don't need political games. They need truth and justice. America is polarized today. Everyone blames everyone else. Some blame Democrats, others Republicans. But if we want to honor Iryna, we must stop using tragedies for division and start fixing the broken system that failed her. Because human life is worth more than political points. Thank you so much for being here and for listening a different perspective, a perspective from an ordinary Ukrainian refugee who's living in the US right now and trying to make sense of this chaos. Please subscribe because I plan to make more videos, and if we share similar values, it would be great to gather here and discuss what's happening in America and the world. And of course, my deepest condolences to Iryna's families, and I truly hope that authorities will take real action instead of blaming each other and using tragedies as political tools.